there was a recent study that was done by the British Menopause Society that says that women typically will gain anywhere between about around 22 pounds, which is 10 kgs of weight starting from perimenopause until menopause, right? And so I know that so many of us, myself included, we're experiencing this. So what's really happening um, that causes this? Like, let's talk about the science behind why we have this weight gain during, perimenopause to menopause years.
Well, first of all, I have to share a clinical story that I'm embarrassed to admit and share, but I do so because I think it really illustrates just how profound this kind of problem is and
Mhm.
how important it is to increase awareness and education and destigmatize this. But, before I'm 56 now, and I had my own GYN practice for 19 years. And
Mhm.
when I was in my 40s, even, solidly perimenopausal, 47, 48, 46. Half my patients were over 50, and they would come
Mhm.
in and they would complain of midsection weight gain around menopause. Actually, that was the number one complaint for my patients. It
Mhm.
was not hot flashes. I mean, I heard it all. Don't get me wrong. I literally heard
Of
every
course.
perimenopausal complaint head
Yep.
to toe. And I personally feel like I experienced every perimenopausal
Mhm.
symptom myself. But the number one most bothersome complaint for my patients was not hot flashes. It was unintentional midsection weight gain. And in
Right.
my mind, when I was hearing that, even when I was board certified in obesity medicine, even when I had a degree in nutrition, in my mind, I still thought, well, basically, you need to try harder. You need to tighten up what you're eating and tighten up your fitness routine, and you won't have that because I didn't have it at that point. And then I started getting it. And I thought,
Right.
"Oh my god. This is this is real." Not that I didn't think it was real before, but I thought there was a heavy component of individual behavioral contribution in there.
Mhm.
And so you ask about the why, which is so important, but I think I always think about health topics, and I did for almost 20 years in national network news in the who, what, where, when, why, how kind of
Sure.
filter. And when you talk about weight gain around menopause, who is literally everyone. Okay, so
Mhm.
let's start there.
Yes, absolutely.
It is the rule, not the exception.
Right.
Okay. Now, the why and the physiology is multifactorial, and this is a problem that is occurring in this space now, one of many, unfortunately, because with the good and all the talking about menopause also comes some not so good. And the not so good actually is the oversimplification, in my professional opinion, of this whole phase in a woman's life. People, often well-credentialed people, making it very binary. It's either all because of a drop of estrogen or all because of your behavior, and it's all fixed with hormones or it's all fixed with exercise and diet. It's just, as you know, Avanti, the
Right.
body is not that simple. It is
Right.
far more nuanced. And so the why is a nuanced answer. Okay. So why? First of all, estrogen absolutely affects metabolism. Period, full stop, end of sentence. It affects insulin resistance. It affects glucose metabolism. It affects deposition of adipose tissue and storage of glycogen. I mean, literally every
Mhm.
pathway along our metabolism is affected by estrogen. Okay.
Right.
Number two, testosterone. You never hear about this. 50%, half of a woman's testosterone is made in our ovaries. And so when our ovaries slow down with the production of estrogen and progestin, it doesn't just maintain the testosterone production, that starts to decline also. And
Right.
that changes our body composition um, big time. The third thing, and this is not in any particular order, is that around this time in our lives, our activity level drops. Okay. I
Mhm.
mean, again, that's just an observational fact. We are less
Sure.
active in our 40s and 50s than we were in our 20s. Okay.
Mhm.
And lastly, and this I find this is actually my favorite explanation because it really makes sense to me. I mean, not the others do too, but this really makes sense in terms
Right.
of the arc of the story. Is that
Mhm.
remember that estrogen is also produced by adipose tissue.
Mhm.
So when our estrogen level from our ovaries starts to go down, our body says, well, I have an alternative fat. So let's start storing fat
Right.
to make some more estrogen. I mean, that's
Mhm.
so logical, right? And it's so smart on the part of the body. We don't like that and it's not good for us, but it is smart. It's a body's compensation to a drop in estrogen level. So all of this goes to the point of midlife, midsection weight gain is real. There is physiology
Mhm.
behind it. And in my
Mhm.
opinion, because I'm kind of a glasses half full type of person, once we understand the why, then we can be smart and strategic about what we do about it.
Yeah, and I really wanted to start with that explanation. Thank you so much for explaining it so clearly and beautifully. Is that I think that so many of us in this age, I'm 54, right? And all my friends, all my patients are in my age range, and we're all talking about this. But I think it's so easy to go into that blame, right? And that what you did just now was to separate the biology and the physiology from this blame, right? And so, how do we start to take action instead of feeling defeated? That's really what I want to, have listeners go away with from this episode is, where would you say to start? And we're going to get into a lot of different things, but,
Yeah.
going from biology to blame, I think is the key here.
Right. And I have a big problem actually with the blame that's going on now in the menopause sphere. I think that that is so not productive. I actually think it victimizes women in a way that a lot of menopause kind of influencers and experts are not even aware of. I know they're not trying to victimize women, but I think when you say outright, no one told me, I wasn't prepared. Well, who is exactly supposed to be preparing you? Right? Like, this is no one prepared me to be pregnant until I was pregnant, and then I prepared myself. No one prepared me, God knows, to go through puberty because that education talk about, you know, something that it really needs help. No one prepares anyone well for puberty, and we got through it. And so all of a sudden, there's this message being sent that in menopause, we women need to be served up this information on a silver platter in a bow. We need to be spoon fed how to prepare ourselves. And I think it actually victimizes women. So I'm glad you mentioned blame. We're not about blame. It's just no one's got time for that, right? I mean, we have more pressing things to do.
Right. And so I think taking that conversation from, oh, no one prepared me to, you know what? I have never gotten this information. I'm going to get the information I need. Right. I'm
Yeah,
going to go to all these resources. I'm going to go to my gynae. I'm going to go to my friends. I'm going to go to all of these great resources online, to these conferences. I'm going to get the information because I've never gotten it before.
right,
So I
right.
think that that's very empowering rather than saying, oh, nobody told me. Okay, nobody told you, but then do something about it, right?
Correct, correct.
So I wanted to, go back to hormones and sort of the control. And, we're talking about the decrease of estrogen and, the fact that, adipose also will create estrogen, our body's trying to compensate. But what is the role of cortisol in all of this? Because we always talk about the stress connection to weight management.
Yeah. So it's so funny you ask about that, Avanti, because it literally in the last week, I did something with a friend of mine on cortisol that I'm going to be posting soon on my Instagram. And this friend of mine happens to be a world renowned endocrinologist
Mhm.
from Los Angeles. Her name is Dr.
Mhm.
Ann Peters. And I said to her, what do you think of all of this cortisol hype out there
Right.
in the wellness space, particularly for women as they go through menopause? And she said, I think it's nuts. And I said, explain. And she
Mhm.
said, cortisol is a essential hormone. As
Mhm.
you know, without
Right.
cortisol, we die. All
Yeah.
right. So and this is as I was just saying as we were starting this conversation, this is where the nuance in medicine comes in. And this is where in my opinion, irresponsible communication of health and wellness and medicine
Yep.
is rampant in social media.
Mhm.
Is that you have
Absolutely.
people who are trying for clickbait, views, oftentimes uncredentialed, who only present one side of things.
Mhm.
Nothing in medicine is that simple, and cortisol is a perfect example of that. So,
Exactly.
cortisol, we want it to be high in certain situations, and we want it to be lower in other situations,
Right.
just like most things.
Right.
Heart rate, I could go on and on. Right now, there's so much noise from women in menopause about cortisol and saying, like, the goal is to keep cortisol low, and cortisol being high is the cause of your weight gain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just not that simple. And, first of all, there are ways to test your cortisol, but even endocrinologists like Dr. Ann Peters says that is so rarely needed in a non-diseased, healthy individual, right?
Right.
And menopause is not a disease state, okay?
Correct.
It's a big state of flux, of
Mhm.
course, just like pregnancy is, but it is
Right.
not a disease. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't require some strategic kind of management, but
Right.
what I was saying to asking her about cortisol, and she was saying to me, is that, look, in our life, especially typical Western life, there is a lot of stress. And I don't mean
Mhm.
like, oh, I have a lot to do. I mean,
Right.
all kinds of stress, environmental
Absolutely.
stress, behavioral stress, toxins, physiologic stress,
Right.
literally the full spectrum of stress. If
Yep.
you continually keep pumping out cortisol, just like
Mhm.
epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine, of course that's not good for you.
Right. Right. Right.
Like, but the key is balance. So in the wellness space, when you hear women say, don't do hit cardio or don't do sprint intervals because it surges your cortisol, my answer is correct. That's the idea, is that
Right.
you're stressing your system and then you bring it down. How do you bring it
Correct.
down? With meditation, with sauna or heat therapy, or chromotherapy. There are a zillion massage
Mhm.
therapy. I love
Right.
meditation and sauna. Those are my
Right.
two favorite. But
Yep.
it's not all or none, good or bad,
Mhm.
black or white. So I'm so glad you asked about that.
Yeah, I mean, because, Western culture and, sort of this wellness world that we both are in, right, is so binary. And it's like if a little is good, then a lot is better. Or, it's always the extremes. And I think that what you're bringing out up is this, there's balance. And we talk about this in Ayurveda all the time, that there is this balance that
Yep.
I will never tell a patient don't do a marathon, don't do a cardio workout, whatever it is. But what I will tell them is that you need to learn how to balance that. You cannot do a 5K run and then go to a hot yoga
No.
class and then go to a hit class and expect that your cortisol is going to be
Right.
regulated and you're going to lose all this weight.
Great.
That is just not the way it is, right? You need to learn how to bring yourself up and down because we were not designed as human beings to be in a stress response 24/7.
Right.
We were designed to be able to run away from the tiger when needed, to get
Right.
to safety, and then to relax. But we're always running from a tiger in the world that we live in.
And I think if people understand, you mentioned the tiger and the fight or flight and the balance of Ayurveda, which is I have been such a fan of for over 20
Mhm.
years, probably close to 30 years
I
actually.
love that. Yeah.
When I actually read Dr. Pratima Raikor's book, Amazing
Mhm.
Beauty, and
She's
I
amazing.
I
She's one of my mentors. She's
oh,
amazing. Oh, I
same,
love her.
same, and it made such an impact on me, and then I got to meet her and know her, and,
Right.
so that balance is essential, and Ayurveda does it better than most any, kind of medical philosophy in the world, in my opinion.